Okay, so one of the things that we're now moving into habit number 5, seek first to understand, then be understood, and words tend to be pretty important. So we're gonna do a little exercise once again with a waterfall in the chat. So I am going to say a word, and let's make the word. Let me get the, let me check my notes. Some words are better than others for this exercise. Okay, yeah. So the word is trust. Okay. So the word is going to be trust. And what I want you to do is, in the chat, I want you to type in, maybe the first, 5 or 6 words that come to mind and put them all in sort of one line. Don't hit enter, right? But just type a series of 5 or 6 words or phrases when you hear the word trust. Okay. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do that. I'm going to watch with an old fashioned second hand on it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to be 60 seconds. Go ahead and type down when you hear the word trust. What is that? What does that suggest to you, or what were some concepts and things that you think are related to trust? I look at this: loyalty, integrity, transparency, honest, truthful, respect and accountability, respect, love, mutual faith, respect, reliable, values. I want you to scan down this list. And I guess the thing that I would like you to observe or sort of point out to you, a simple word as trust is, right? We say we trust someone, right? What you just see here is all the different sort of aspects or dimensions or interpretations of what, trust could be to different people, right? And that's one of the things when we're trying to seek to understand somebody, it's not simple, right? That it really takes some work, and we might have to do a lot of unpacking to get to the right meaning or the right thing that's trying to be conveyed, right? So that's a little exercise to kind of get us into um, this next habit: seek first to understand, then be understood. This is the habit of empathic communication. All right. So we're up in this upper public victory triangle. We talked about habit 4, think win-win. Now we're at seek first to understand, to then to be understood. And we want to remember how this the habits work in this upper part of the maturity continuum, right? So win-win is the attitude. Okay, I want to think win-win. That's the attitude I want to have. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then be understood, is the skill, right? So there's going to be some practice involved in building up the skill or the capability to execute. And the result that we're going to get is to synergize. And I point out to you that, one of the things that Sandra was talking about early on was this idea of, she had to get all these different departments and all these different pieces to communicate together well or talk to each other in order to get the synergy of a large organization or making something happen for the good of the patients, right? So the habit here, the principles that underlie this habit are respect, mutual understanding, empathy, and courage, right? Need to make sure people understand my point of view. That's the common paradigm. The highly effective paradigm is you actually have a greater influence with others if you truly understand them first. Common practices: listen with the intent to reply, right? I'm too busy thinking what I'm going to say next to really listen to somebody. And you confront, offend, or you just don't speak up at all. And the highly effective practice is practicing empathic listening and then respectfully seeking to be understood. All right, so as always, get your benchmark assessment out and see what your score was on this particular habit, and identify one or two focus areas where you think you can improve, right? And this is going to help your learning process for this habit. All right, so notice these glasses here. So this is the idea, and it's related to the video on how you perceive and see yourself. And so it's real important, this habit is like how you see the other person, or how you try to understand what it is that they're talking about. So so what we want to do here is try to identify on page 120, we have a little exercise here of identifying what gets in the way of listening, right? For you, right? What gets in the way of listening, right? And think about the time when someone didn't listen to you, what impact on the relationship, what gets in the way of you listening effectively. So you're going to go ahead and answer these on Canvas. I encourage you to go to Canvas, take a look at these questions, make sure that you understand it. And if you have any questions, ask them before we get offline tonight. So here's a couple of ways that, probably get in the way of us really listening effectively: probing, evaluating, advising, and interpreting. So we're going to watch, these are called autobiographical responses. So we're going to watch this little video, and I'm going to stop sharing because I know I forgot to turn on the sound optimization. And I'm going to share. And now let's go ahead and watch this video about autobiographical responses.
One thing that gets in the way of meaningful communication is autobiographical listening. This means that we filter what others say through our own story, our own experiences, our biases, prejudices, and all of our values. You see, when I listen autobiographically, part of my story gets added to your story. And then when I respond, I base it on my own frame of reference. I might ask questions, or I might agree or disagree. I might decide it's necessary to counsel you, or try to solve the problem or fix the situation. So with the best of intentions, I can end up leading the conversation. And even worse, I don't hear what you're really trying to say. Autobiographical responses fall into 4 categories: probing, asking questions; evaluating, like agreeing or disagreeing; advising, that is, giving counsel; or interpreting, or trying to figure a person out or to analyze them. But don't misunderstand. Autobiographical responses can be very appropriate, especially when the emotional bank account with another person is high. But when real understanding and clarity are needed, and when the problems are very emotional, autobiographical responses only get in the way. Watch the impact of autobiographical responses in the next segment.
Doing your homework?
What's the point? I'll never use it.
Of course you will.
Classical Greek drama. Not likely.
No one gets anywhere without an education these days.
Really? Joe's got a full-time job and he's already a manager. He has his own car, his own apartment. And me? I'm not that interested in this.
But you're interested in this.
Absolutely. I just think it's a waste of time to learn something you'll never use in the real world, when I could be out working, getting a real experience, making money.
So you want to quit? Think about your sister. She struggled in school, but she worked hard, and now
she's the queen of college and probably become a brain surgeon and end global warming. I'm not my sister, Mom.
I know it's hard right now, but all the effort will be worth it. When I was your age,
You wanted to join a rock band and travel the world, But instead, you chose hard work and all this.
You just have to hang in there.
No, I don't.
Fine. Quit. Move in with Joe. You think life is so wonderful, so easy? Maybe then you'd appreciate what you have here.
Fine, maybe I will.
Fine.
Okay, so you can see, in that video, examples of probing, evaluating, judging, advising, right? So all those things were the mom sort of, running her script on top of what her son was trying to tell her. Okay, so so what we want to do is we want to practice empathic listening. So empathic listening, and this is the thing, this is a tough skill to get, and it's a tough skill to do it well. The thing that you need to remember is that you want to have the intent to understand. So one of the things I pointed you to at the beginning of this class was this idea of humble inquiry, right? Asking questions that you really want to know the answer to, right? It's not a question to fix someone or a question to get a result or manipulate a person in a certain direction, right? You're really trying to genuinely try to understand. So even if you don't have the skill piece really well, the intent piece will come across pretty strongly, right? So focus on the intent, and then with practice, the skill's going to follow, right? So you want to have the intent. So you say you feel, so the way the skill is structured, you feel this about that, right? You feel angry, frustrated, excited, sad, and then insert some content, right? Keep in the context. And you're trying to keep in the context of the person who you're trying to listen to. You're not trying to insert your context or your assumption. You're trying to stay in their context. Okay. So before we sort of move forward to this next little video, I want to share with you like a little anecdote from my college experience, actually. So when I went to college, I went to the University of Maine, and I was in the dormitories. And as a freshman, I was really kind of very pleased with, some of the late night conversations. We talk about these really sort of deep things, and I don't know, I didn't get that, deep maybe with my high school buddies and friends like that. But in college, it seems like, okay, people were, at a maturity level where, some bigger issues were maybe a little bit more important. And I really enjoyed those late night conversations. Turns out when I came back the next year, I had some of the same folks who were in the dormitory, and we're trying to strike up these conversations. And turns out that a lot of the people that I was talking with were people that were getting their degrees in counseling or social work or things like that. And people that used to be good at sort of telling me the answer or telling me certain things, were awkwardly trying to apply this sort of dynamic, right? So it's like, Eric, I hear what you're saying is this, right? And maybe you sort of run into people like that, right? You just want them to talk to you, and they're trying to practice a skill. Well, it's because everybody's very awkward at this at first, right? And it takes some practice to get good at doing this. So I encourage you to hang in there, keep up with it, keep up with the intent, focus on the intent, and then the skill is going to follow. And we'll do a little bit of practicing with this later on in the class. So here, let's go ahead and take a look at this next part of the movie. So this is what empathic listening looks like.
Too often, we listen to others with the intent to reply. Empathic listening is an altogether different way of being. It is listening with the intent to understand, with the intent to get to the bottom of an issue. It's one of the most important habits any leader can practice. It's the key to effective results in interpersonal relationships, in teams, and in organizations. When we listen empathically, we try to understand the other's point of view with no judgment, with no preconceived end in mind. We simply seek to understand. We temporarily suspend our view long enough to see the world through their eyes. Only people who are secure enough with themselves, those with a firm grasp of the private victory, have the capacity to listen in this way. It's important to note that empathic listening is not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's not about solving or fixing or figuring someone out. It's simply about understanding another's point of view and feelings. Watch what happens when you listen with the sole intent to understand.
Doing your homework?
What's the point? I'll never use it.
Sounds like you're frustrated.
I'm just sick of school. It's pointless. I mean, look at Joe. He dropped out of school, has a full-time job, has his own car, his own apartment, and I'm stuck here trying to decipher some ancient Greek play no one even cares about.
So you think Joe's got it better?
I mean, Joe's always bragging about how much better his life is now that he doesn't have to worry about teachers bossing him around or everyone telling him what to do.
Joe's got a lot of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's doing something. He has to work late nights, so he can't hang out with us as much or go to the games, but at least he's going somewhere.
So he's missing out on a lot, but at least he's moving forward.
I just can't get this stuff. Dad's gonna kill me. You won't tell him, will you?
You worried about what Dad'll think?
It's just he always talks about how education is important and how he expects me to go to college, but how can I do that if I can't do this?
So you're worried that if you don't understand this, then you won't get it in college either.
I know I can't. They gave me a reading test, right? On the reading test, I scored on the 9th grade level, Mom. The 9th grade. I'm a senior.
And that worried you?
No matter what I do, I just don't get it. And I know Dad will know that I'm flunking out. I don't want to quit school, but I don't know any way out.
You don't want to drop out of school, and you don't want to disappoint Dad.
Right. So what will I do?
I'm not sure. But I'm sure we can figure things out.
All you need to do is reflect what they feel and say in your own words. And because it's so simple, we often underestimate its power. If you don't believe me, just try it tonight with someone important to you. Just simply reflect what they feel and say in your own words. Remember now, listen with the intent to understand, not to reply. It's the key to opening up people's hearts and getting to the real issue.
So I like that little video and the comparison about, the autobiographical listening versus the more powerful empathic listening that in the second case. Also point out, as I've watched this, noticing the mom, sort of strategically using silence, right? So it might be better just to say nothing. You notice she moved closer to the other person, sat down next to her son, followed him out to the balcony. So there's some body language and communication there that goes a little bit deeper than maybe what you first notice as you sort of see this, right? So you're replying with, recognizing the person's feelings, right? The emotions that they're trying to put forth, and then also the context of what they're talking about. Just reflect. So there's a little exercise here that we're going to go ahead and do. So if you get out your little ring binder, so I got it in my face here. So you're getting out your little ring binder. It's called the skill cards, right? And if you open up your skill cards, you remember we did the proactive language. Now you're going to turn to the section on empathic responses. All right, so go to the tab where it talks about empathic responses. And I'm gonna let's see. So let's see. I am going to ask. So I'm going to ask somebody to sort of help me with this, and so you just have to do like the first situation here, and then you have to act out the emotion, right? So I need to sort of hear this in your voice, and I'm going to try to practice empathic listening if I was the person that was trying to listen in this situation, right? So let me get how about Jack? Can you help me out with this? Can you pop on your video for a minute? Hey Jack, here we go. All right, so do you have your little book?
Unfortunately, no, I'm not at my house right now, so I don't have access to my living notebook.
Okay, so Jack, I'm gonna make it easier for you. So if you just remember this or jot this down. So the situation is you're gonna say to me, my colleague repeatedly takes credit for my work, and you're expressing the emotion of irritation. Do you have enough acting in your bones to be able to do that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so go ahead. So
Hello, colleague. I'm acting this out with you, correct?
yeah, you're acting out was you're like I'm another colleague or your boss, and you're saying my colleague repeatedly takes credit for my work. So go ahead.
Okay. Hello, boss. I'm just coming to you today because I just want to kind of point something out that I know I've been noticing that John Smith has been taking credit for my work a lot. I just wanted to come to you first. I'm going to have a conversation with him later today about kind of just how that is affecting me. But I just wanted to come to you first, just so if things escalate, that I can kind of bring you in to handle the situation.
Okay, Jack, it sounds like you're irritated.
Mhm. I am, yes.
Okay, so that was me sort of responding on the feelings. Another, I can go further. I can use your words. And says, um, it sounds like you're irritated, and your coworker is taking credit for your work.
That is correct.
Now I'm going to kind of try to put it together, and I'm going to use feelings and words. What I'm hearing is that your coworker takes credit for your work, and that upsets you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so you don't have to. So Jack, you're excellent job. You did a good job, especially without the little book thing here. So what this little book has, it has a bunch of different situations, right? And what you want to do is you take this little book, you look at the situation, and if your colleague said repeatedly takes credit for your work, and there was irritation, you could practice those empathetic responses, right? First, what's the emotion? What would you say about the emotion? What would you say about the context? And then how would you put those two things together? Okay. So we're not going to do the class breakout exercise, but I encourage you to get out your little books and at some point just sort of sit down, look through those, and before you flip the page and see maybe examples of what the recommended responses are, go ahead and take a shot at it yourself as to how you'd respond if you were sort of in that situation. Okay. All right. So that's that. And let's go ahead and Now what we want to do is, at some point, the conversation opens up, and this little traffic light sort of thing is, maybe you want to have a little traffic light idea in your head, right? So you're not saying anything, or you're just reflecting, right? And that's in your sort of red light. At the yellow light level, you maybe starting to say, is there some clarifying questions, or can I open this conversation up? And then the green light is when, the person has, felt like they're heard, and then you're going to have the courage to maybe, um, you know, try to be understood by the other person, right? So that's a little red light, yellow light, green light analogy here, right? So here's some tips for empathic listening. Focus on your intent. Don't worry about the correct responses, right? Right. Really have that, you want to know the answer. You want to understand. That's your intent. And don't be afraid of silence, right? So if you're silent, people will eventually fill that silence with their thoughts. So then the next step is you're asking clarifying questions, right? And in clarifying questions, you want to stay with the subject the speaker brought into the conversation. So you don't want to imprint your autobiographical or say, hey, have you ever thought of this other thing? Or, when I was a child, I did this, right? So you want to clarify this subject that the speaker brought into the conversation, right? So sample clarifying questions might be, can you tell me more? When you say blank, what do you mean? Can you help me understand what you mean when you say? So one of the things, after learning this, I take this into my teacher and my workshop practice when I'm working with companies and organizations trying to improve. One of my favorite statements, when somebody gives me a sort of a bullet or a brainstorming point and I'm writing on the flip chart, I'll say, tell me more. Just say, tell me more, right? Is a good way to get people to open up and try to be heard. So these are good sample clarifying questions, right? So same thing, and if you go to your little book, the next section is on clarifying questions and getting some practice on that. And so the way that goes is, if you look at situation number 1 in that little book, we'd have somebody like Jack say, oh, I got some really tough feedback on a presentation I gave last week. Right? And the empathic response is, you sound defeated by the feedback you got on your presentation last week. And the speaker might say, yeah. And then you would ask a clarifying question. So a clarifying question might be, when you say you got tough feedback, what did you mean? Can you tell me more about that? Right? And you're trying to get the person to open up in their responses. So that's another section in this book, trying to get a little bit of practice with, first empathic listening and responses, and then asking for clarifying questions. And what you're looking for is that's the yellow light level, clarifying questions. Ultimately, you're looking for the green light. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a talking stick, right? And it's a little artifact. Some of you might have gotten that in some of your 7 habit kits. I think some of them they discontinued providing those, so it depends on what generation on your kit you got. But the idea of a talking stick, maybe you've seen this in different things like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or a campfire situation where you're passing around a stick, and the rule is you can't talk unless you have a stick. So this is another kind of little mechanism or artifact on how to get people to listen, right? So you're either talking because you got the stick, or if you don't have the stick, you are in listening mode. Okay, so this is another exercise where you could take turns being the speaker and the listener, right? And then once we've kind of got through the empathic listening, so you've kind of gone through that to really understand the other person, next it's time to respectfully seek to be understood. Right? So you've got this intent to be understood, and then you've got the skill of being understood, and the skill involves using I messages. Right? It's like, it's not you should do this, you always do that. So those are you messages. What we want to use is I messages. I feel this about that. I would like to. Based on my experience, I think we should. You could be right. However, I prefer. So these are keeping it in the I message realm. And you've probably heard about this in other communication classes using I messages. So I messages describe your feelings, concerns, and perceptions. That's a deposit. You messages describe other people's behaviors, theories, and motives. You're figuring them out, right? And that would be a withdrawal, right, in the emotional bank account. So here are some examples of how you might structure things, right? I would like to, based on my experience, I think we should. You could be right. I can see what you mean. I have a different point of view I'd like to share, right? Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Would you be willing to hear mine? This is a favorite one of mine where you're actually asking for permission, right? And there's actually sort of two places in this habit where I think, permission is warranted and can be a very effective communication technique and is a deposit and builds trust. The first is when you're trying to listen to somebody, right? You might actually say, hey, I've been to the 7 habits class, and there's a habit number 5 that talks about seeking first to understand before you're understood. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to practice that habit. I really want to try to understand what you're saying. So I'm going to try to limit my responses and just sort of focus on hearing you and what you have, right? Or have to say and what you think, right? So you're really trying to do that. And by the way, I'm a little inexperienced in this. I'm not always the best listener. And I'm trying to develop this in my life as a good sort of tool and a good relationship builder. Will you work with me and help me really to understand and stick with this, right, before I'm understood? Then, you say, is it okay if I ask a few clarifying questions? And then, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Would you be willing to hear mine at this point? Is it okay if you try to understand my point of view? So you're asking for permission. So you're looking for that green light, right? Red light, yellow light, you're looking for the green light, and that's when it's okay to share your own thoughts. Right? So you have another section in this little skills book that talks about how you can then get to the point where you're trying to be understood. Okay. And some tips for being understood. If the person interrupts you, you can, say, well, you know, maybe I didn't really sort of understand, or is it my turn, or is it okay if I continue? Right? If they sort of go on, if they interrupt you, it could also be a sign that they don't really feel understood themselves, and you might have to go back, right? So that could be, back to red light land. And then if the person becomes emotional, right? You maybe, that's another thing that, you need to make sure that you really sort of understand, you're empathetic, that you're going with their feeling and you're trying to be understanding, right? And then if you still don't feel understood at the end, maybe, this is where you can start thinking about, okay, maybe I need to come back another time. Is it okay if we, go back, think about this on our own, and can we come back again, maybe have a cup of coffee or sit down and talk about this again in the future, maybe when we're both not so emotionally elevated about this situation. Okay, so you've got in habit number 5, you get this intent and skill, is always what you're trying to balance, right? So begin with the end in mind, define the outcome you desire from the interaction, like what do you want to try to accomplish with this other person? Consider the emotional bank account. It's much easier to do this if the level of trust is high. If the level of trust is low, you're gonna have to spend a lot more time just in that listening mode, right? That empathic listening, right? Just really seeking to understand, right? And then clearly state your intent. Be specific. Don't leave interpretation of your motives to chance, right? And that's where I was giving you that little idea of maybe, if you're going into a situation where you think this habit 5 dynamic is going to be an important thing for improving your relationship, ask for permission. Ask for permission to try to use the listening habit. Ask for permission to use the try to be understood habit, right? Maybe this is an opportunity for you to teach somebody a little bit about the 7 habits and specifically about habit number 5. Okay, so in your book and maybe in the discussion that you have for this week, talk about what you found most helpful, most insightful. Use your practice cards. So there's also some practice cards in your deck with regards to this habit, where you can actually teach this to somebody else. And if you teach it to somebody else, maybe they would be willing to help you practice this particular habit. Okay, so here's a little video to wrap up the class tonight. We'll come back after this and we'll close things out per usual. And I will hang around till if anybody wants to talk or discuss homework or issues or things that they're going through, I will be glad to do that after this video. So here we go. It's not about the nail.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't... That is so funny.
Okay, so that was, it's not about the nail. That is Googleable. So you can get that video if you want to share that with friends or significant others. You can do that. But that's it for tonight. I will see you next Tuesday. As always, you can escape from this class, turn on your video, give me a little wave goodbye. And we'll see you later.
Bye, Professor Olsen. Thank you.
Happy to do that. Take care, everybody.